Welcome, traveler. You found your way back to Night Whispers, a place where shadows linger, where stories drift like fog across the sea, and where sleep comes wrapped in mystery. Tonight, I have a tale for you, a story to carry you through the long hours of the night. It is called The Vanishing Ship. So settle in. Let the rain fall softly outside your window. Let the lighthouse beam guide your dreams. And listen closely, because once you step aboard, there may be no turning back. The sea holds more than waves and salt. It holds whispers. That night, the storm had passed, but the fog remained, thick, heavy, endless. I was dozing in my cabin near the Maine coast when my old radio, silent for years, came alive. A voice slipped through the static, broken, distant, drifting, still drifting. I froze. The radio had no signal, yet the whisper kept coming. The fog, it takes the soul. Curiosity dragged me outside. The lighthouse beam swept across the black horizon, and that's when I saw it. Lights, faint in the mist. A ship, silent, adrift. I rowed toward it, oars cutting into water that seemed too still for the storm that had passed. The vessel rose before me, massive, rusted, lifeless, yet somehow warm to the touch when I tied my rope to its ladder. The moment I climbed aboard, the air changed. The ocean's roar dulled to silence. Fog curled across the deck, and shadows shifted at the edges of sight. Then came the whisper, closer now, brushing against my ear. "You shouldn't have come." And waiting near the helm, I found it, an old logbook, its last words etched in smeared ink. The fog does not lift. We hear them in the mist. If this is our last entry, know this: the sea has taken us, but not as men. The ship creaked, the fog thickened, and the voice rose again, no longer from the radio, but from the very boards beneath my feet. "Now you are part of us." The first thing I noticed as my boots touched the deck was not the sound of wood beneath me, but the absence of sound altogether. No gulls, no waves, no creak of rope or rattle of chain. The sea had gone still, and the air heavy. The ship stretched long and narrow beneath the fog. Its railings were eaten with rust, its ropes stiff and brittle with salt, and yet the wood held a warmth that unsettled me, as if the vessel had not been abandoned at all, but rather alive. I paused, listening. Somewhere below, something shifted, a scrape, faint, then gone. The fog pressed closer, and I felt, rather than saw, that the world outside the vessel had ceased to exist. I tried to steady myself. "It's just a ship," I thought, "a derelict, nothing more." But the logbook in my coat pocket seemed to pulse with weight, its last words gnawing at my mind. "The sea has taken us, but not as men." I began to walk the deck. Each step echoed too loudly, as if the wood resented my presence. Rain had left slick pools that reflected the faint light of the lighthouse beam still sweeping in the distance, though the fog dimmed it to a pale glow. On the starboard side, a lifeboat hung in tatters, its ropes frayed, its hull torn as if clawed at from within. I leaned closer, my breath fogging in the damp air, and noticed the faint outline of handprints, hundreds of them, streaked across the wood. Not painted, not carved, pressed in deep, as though left in moments of panic. A chill worked down my spine. I moved on. The ship's wheel stood rigid, its spokes coated with green algae. A compass sat beside it, but the needle spun in slow, endless circles, never pausing, never pointing true. And then, a whisper. Not from the radio this time, not from memory, from behind me. "Leave!" I turned sharply, breath caught in my throat. The deck was empty, shrouded in fog. The railing groaned as the vessel rocked, though the water had not moved. I forced my steps forward toward the captain's quarters. The door loomed, heavy oak swollen with water, its brass handle dulled. When I touched it, the handle was warm, like skin left too long in the sun. I pulled it open. The cabin was dim, lit only by the sickly glow of a lantern swaying on a hook. Papers littered the desk, soaked and curling, covered in ink that bled into illegibility. But the walls, oh, the walls were lined with mirrors. Not full mirrors, shards, cracked pieces bolted into the wood, all reflecting warped slices of my face. I stepped inside, and every reflection seemed delayed. When I moved, they moved just a fraction slower, their eyes lingering where mine had already passed. "Drifting," one of the reflections whispered. My heart seized. I stumbled back, but my shoulder brushed a map nailed to the wall. Its ink had run into veins, the coastline spreading like arteries. The name Maine still visible, but distorted, bleeding into nothingness. The lantern flickered, and I caught sight of something in the largest shard of mirror. Not me. Not fully. A figure, tall and thin, its head bowed, its outline blurred by fog. It stood where I stood, yet its hand reached toward me while mine hung still. The glass trembled, a faint tap as though fingers pressed from the other side. I fled the cabin, slamming the door behind me, the echo chasing down the length of the ship. On deck, the fog had thickened, swallowing the masts, pressing in close enough to dampen every breath. I leaned hard against the railing, my heart pounding, the logbook's weight unbearable in my pocket. Somewhere below deck, a sound rose again, a dragging, heavy, deliberate, like footsteps. I told myself it was only the ship settling, only the sea reclaiming what it had lost. But the rhythm, slow, patient, steady, was unmistakable. Someone, or something, was moving beneath me, and the whisper returned, carried in the fog. "You shouldn't have come." The sound came again, that dragging step, slow, heavy, patient. I leaned against the railing, listening. The fog muffled everything, but not that. Never that. It pulsed through the boards, rising up my boots, trembling in my chest. I swallowed hard, and my hand found the lantern by the helm. Its flame was weak, guttering, but it was light. And on this ship, light felt like breath. The stairwell down to the lower deck yawned near the mast, the hatch left ajar. A stale, damp wind lifted from it, curling the fog in a spiral, as if the ship itself exhaled from its lungs. For a moment, I thought of turning back. I could climb down to my rowboat, cut the rope, and let the current take me home. I could pretend I never heard the whispers, pretend the logbook was only a dream. But the words inside it gnawed at me. The sea has taken us, but not as men. And there was the truth of it. I had to know. So I pushed the hatch open, and the hinges screamed. The sound carried, hollow, through the ship's ribs. Lantern first, I descended. The stairs groaned,
soft rot underfoot, and each step brought a new smell: mildew, rust, and something else. A copper tang, sharp and bitter. The lower deck stretched wide, its beams low, its air wet and suffocating. The lantern glow trembled across barrels and crates stacked high, their wood warped and swollen. Ropes dangled from above, cut and frayed, swaying though there was no breeze. The dragging stopped. Silence. I froze on the final step, lantern held high. My breath sounded too loud, my heartbeat too fast. From the shadows between the crates, a whisper rose. Drifting. I swung the lantern, its light spilling across the hold. Nothing. Only rows of abandoned supplies, half-open barrels leaking salt water that pooled on the floor. But the whisper lingered, like mist clinging to skin. I moved forward. My boots splashed softly in the water, every step leaving ripples that refused to fade. I noticed shapes scrawled on the barrels, drawn in thick black ink. Circles, spirals, eyes, hundreds of eyes, each staring upward as if pleading for something unseen above. The copper tang grew stronger. At the far end of the hold, a door stood crooked on its hinges. The wood stained dark. My hand hesitated on the latch. A sound leaked from the other side. Not dragging, not whispering, breathing. Shallow, raspy, wrong. I pushed the door open, and the lantern revealed what lay inside. Bunks lined the walls, dozens of them. Crew quarters, blankets still rumpled, boots still scattered on the floor. But the beds were not empty. Shapes lay upon them, covered in sheets, stiff with salt. At first I thought them bodies, preserved by sea air, but when the lantern's glow touched their faces, I realized the truth. They were not dead, not alive. Their skin was gray, their lips cracked, their eyes open but unmoving. They lay perfectly still, yet every so often one chest rose with the faintest breath, and each time they exhaled, a whisper escaped, soft, endless, the same word, drifting. The sound filled the quarters, a chorus of the damned. My knees weakened, and I stumbled back against the door frame. One of them turned its head, slowly, grindingly. Its eyes locked on mine, pupils pale as seawater, unblinking. Its lips parted, and this time the whisper was not faint. "You shouldn't have come." The others stirred. Limbs shifted beneath the sheets, stiff and brittle, yet moving all the same. Panic surged through me. I backed into the hall, the lantern swinging wildly, shadows stretching long against the beams. My boot caught on a rope, and I nearly fell into the pooling water. That was when I saw it, etched into the boards beneath my feet. Carvings, deep and deliberate. Names, dozens of them. The crew, perhaps, but many had been crossed out, gouged until the wood split. And at the very end of the list, a space left blank, waiting for me. The whispers grew louder, bleeding from the quarters, filling the hold until the air itself seemed to hum. My lantern sputtered, the flame shrinking, struggling for life. In the dark between its flickers, I saw movement. Figures shifting in the bunks, sitting up, feet sliding to the floor. Their voices rose in unison. "Now you are part of us." I ran, back towards the stairwell, the lantern light bouncing across the carved names, across the spirals and eyes that seemed to pulse as I passed. My boots pounded against the boards, but the whispers followed, swelling, chasing. At the base of the stairs, I paused only long enough to glance back. The crew stood in the hall now, dozens of them, swaying, their heads tilted, their eyes fixed on me, not rushing, not chasing, only watching, as though they knew the ship itself would not let me leave.
I slammed the hatch shut behind me, my breath coming in shallow bursts. The fog on the upper deck greeted me like an old friend, curling close, almost hiding me. Almost. But below, they were still there, watching, waiting. I gripped the lantern tight, though its flame had shrunk to a pale blue lick, as if the ship itself was starving it. My mind screamed at me to climb down to the rowboat, cut the rope and vanish into the sea. But the thought of turning my back, of giving the ship what it seemed to want, froze my legs. Instead, I stumbled toward the stern, the boards slick with mist. Somewhere deep inside, metal groaned, a pulse of sound, low and steady, like a beating heart. The ship was alive. I followed the sound, past the mast, past coils of rope that twitched as though disturbed by unseen hands, past shattered windows where the fog pushed in thick as wool. Each step carried me closer to the core, to the heart that kept this derelict vessel breathing. The hatch to the lower stern waited, rusted, sealed tight, as if never meant to be opened again. My hand shook as I pulled, and the iron groaned, protesting. The lantern flickered as though warning me, and then it gave way. The stairwell beyond plunged into blackness, the damp walls slick with salt. The air grew hot as I descended, heavy with the smell of oil and something far older, something burnt, charred. At the bottom, my lantern finally found the source of the sound. The engine room. But it was no machine I had ever seen. The ship's heart was twisted, unnatural, its gears melted into one another, its pistons frozen mid-motion, its metal warped as though reshaped by fire. Cables dangled from above like veins, dripping black fluid that hissed on the floor. Yet it still pulsed. Still it breathed. A wheel turned, though nothing powered it. A pipe exhaled steam, though no heat fed it. The engine wasn't running, it was living. I stepped closer, the lantern trembling in my hand. The black fluid spread across the floor, seeping toward me, sluggish but intent. And within its surface, I swore I saw faces, human, distorted, mouths opening in silent screams. Whispers filled the room, not one voice, hundreds, thousands, layered and rising, their words twisting together until they became a single thought. Feed the heart. My throat tightened, the logbook's last entry burned in my memory. The sea has taken us, but not as men. This was what it meant. The ship's heart had consumed them, and it wanted more.
The whispers swelled and I stumbled back against the wall. A panel of rusted steel shifted beneath my hand, revealing carvings beneath the grime. Not words this time. Symbols, spirals, eyes. Always eyes. But at the center of them, carved deeper than all the rest, was a name. My name. The lantern's flames sputtered violently, almost extinguished, and the engine groaned louder as if it knew, as if it had been waiting. From the shadows between the machinery, something stirred. Figures, not like the crew I had seen above. These were twisted, broken, fused with the ship itself, a man's torso protruding from a steel pipe, arms bent at impossible angles, mouth locked in a permanent cry. Another figure half sunken into the floor, its body rippling with the heartbeat of the engine. Their eyes followed me, glowing faint, reflecting the lantern's weak light. And then, in the voice that did not belong to one, but all of them together, they spoke. Now you are part of us. The black fluid surged, lapping against my boots, climbing, burning cold. I wrenched my foot free, stumbling toward the stairs, but the hatch above slammed shut on its own, sealing me inside. The engine roared, the ship trembled, as though waking fully for the first time. Steam hissed, metal shrieked, and the whisper became a scream. "Feed the heart!" I pounded against the hatch, the lantern swinging wildly, its light painting frantic circles across the walls. Faces stretched in the fluid, mouths wide, arms reaching, dragging themselves closer. The flame shrank to a spark. And in that dying glow, I saw the truth carved in the wall, hidden among the spirals and eyes. Once aboard, none leave. The lantern went out, and the heart kept beating.
The lantern had gone out, but the darkness did not claim me fully. A faint glow pulsed from the floor, soft, rhythmic, in time with the heart of the ship. It lit the walls just enough to reveal the twisted faces still writhing in the black fluid, mouths silently calling for me. I pressed harder against the hatch, panic gnawing at my resolve, and this time it gave way. A rush of damp air poured in as I pulled myself up, scraping hands and knees against the rusted ladder, until at last I stumbled onto the deck. The fog was waiting. Thicker now, pressed close, as if it had grown teeth in my absence. The ship rocked gently, though the water was still calm, but every sound, the creak of the boards, the sigh of the ropes, seemed swallowed before it could travel more than a few feet. I staggered forward, pulling in long breaths of the cold air, desperate to feel free of the engine room's suffocating grip. But the relief was short-lived, because the fog wasn't just around me, it was watching me. Shapes formed in it, faces. A hand stretched, dissolved, and reappeared closer. Shadows slid along the deck, formless yet deliberate. Every time I blinked, the fog creeped nearer, until it coiled around my ankles like smoke. I hurried toward the rail, thinking of the rowboat tied to the side. Freedom, escape. Even if it meant drifting blind into the sea, it would be better than remaining on this cursed ship. But when I reached the side, my hope shattered. The boat was gone. The ropes that once held it dangled loose, ends frayed, dripping with seawater. I leaned over the edge, but below there was nothing. No ripples, no sign of movement. Only black water stretching endlessly, swallowing the horizon whole. The fog whispered, "You cannot leave." The voice came from nowhere and everywhere, close as breath against my ear. I spun, searching, but the deck lay empty. Only the fog shifted, curling higher, wrapping around the masts, sliding along the boards in slow pursuit. I gripped the rail, shaking. "I don't belong here," I muttered, though the sound of my voice felt strange, too loud in the silence. felt too small against the weight of the ship's presence. The fog didn't answer this time. It parted. Ahead, at the far end of the deck, the captain's cabin door swung open. No lantern glowed within. Only blackness stretched, deep and endless, as if the cabin itself had become a tunnel into the sea. And there, within that tunnel, I saw him. The captain. He stood tall, his coat ragged, his face pale beneath a shadowed brim. His eyes burned faint white, not with light, but with reflection, like a predator in the dark. He did not move, but his presence filled the air, as if the ship itself bowed to him. "Why?" I whispered before I could stop myself. His head tilted slightly, and then the logbook in my pocket burned hot, so searing I tore it free and dropped it on the deck. The pages burst open, flipping violently, though there was no wind. Words glowed across the final entry. Not ink, not scratches, burning letters etched in salt and ash. The sea does not take, it keeps. The captain stepped forward, the blackness behind him following like a tide. I stumbled back, the fog pressing against my spine, the rail biting into me. The logbook snapped shut with a sound sharp as bone breaking, and when I looked down, it was gone. The captain raised a hand, not in greeting, in command. The deck shuddered, the ship groaned as if woken from slumber, and the fog surged, swallowing everything. I ran. I don't know where my feet carried me, across slick boards, past ropes that reached like grasping hands, past doors that slammed shut as I neared them. The ship itself guided me, funneled me, forced me toward the bow. There, at the very tip of the vessel, I collapsed against the railing, chest heaving, the world drowned in white. But the fog was no longer empty. Figures stood within it, shoulder to shoulder, countless, their shapes wavering, but their faces clear. The crew, the lost, eyes pale, mouths silent, watching me. Their skin dripped seawater, their clothes heavy with rot, but not one moved closer. They only stared. And in their silence, I understood. They weren't keeping me from leaving. They were waiting for me to choose. Behind me, the captain's voice finally broke the quiet, low and steady, carried on the heartbeat of the ship itself. You cannot run from the sea. The fog swelled, blotting out the lighthouse beam, blotting out the stars. The world beyond the ship ceased to exist, and for the first time I realized maybe it never had.
The fog pressed close, thick enough to taste, briny and bitter like iron and rot. Behind me, the captain's footsteps sounded against the deck, slow, deliberate, each one echoing as though carried by the hollow bones of the ship itself. I didn't turn at first. The sight of those pale-eyed sailors in the mist held me fast. Their silence was suffocating. They were not alive, yet not dead. They lingered in a space between, bound to the fog, bound to the vessel, waiting, always waiting. Finally, I forced myself to face him. The captain stood just beyond the rail, his towering frame haloed by fog. His coat hung heavy with seawater, buttons green with corrosion, but his posture was unbroken, rigid, commanding. The brim of his hat cast a shadow across his face, but his eyes still glowed, faint and unnatural, like the reflection of moonlight on dark waves. "You have come far," he said at last. His voice was not loud, yet it filled the deck, seeping into the wood and water, resonating with something deep inside my chest. "I didn't choose this," I whispered. My voice sounded small, cracked. "No," he agreed, his gaze steady. "The sea calls, the fog answers, and those who hear it cannot refuse." I shook my head, clutching the rail. I just wanted to see. He stepped closer, and the deck creaked under his weight. You heard the whispers. On your radio, in your dreams, the sea found a way to reach you. And now, here you are, standing where countless others have stood before, breathing the same cursed air, feeling the same pull. I swallowed hard, but my throat was dry. Why me? Why this ship? The captain's mouth twitched, almost a smile, though it held no warmth. There is no why. There is only the sea. She does not reason. She does not forgive. She takes, she keeps, she remembers. And we are her memory. Behind him, the fog shifted, and the crew moved in unison, a ripple of pale faces leaning closer, not attacking, not approaching, just waiting. I tried to back away, but the rail was already against me. I don't want this, I said, louder now, desperation cracking the calm. I'm not one of you. The captain's hand shot out, not touching me, but raised in command. At once, the fog surged upward, coiling around my legs, seeping into my clothes, cold as the grave. My heart thundered as I felt it press into my skin, as though it were trying to seep inside. You are already, he said. I struggled, clutching the rail, kicking at the mist, but the fog thickened. It pressed against my mouth, my nose, filling my lungs with salt. The world spun, my vision blurred. And then, just as the panic rose to breaking, he lowered his hand. The fog eased, not gone, but loosened, retreating just enough to let me gasp for air. The captain's gaze bore into me, relentless, unyielding. You are not ready, he said, but you will be. My chest heaved, my hands trembled against the rusted rail. What do you want from me? He said, nothing, everything. You are not the first to ask. You will not be the last. The sea does not want answers. She only wants what is hers. His words lingered in the air, heavy as the fog. I dared to glance past him, toward the sailors still lingering at the edge of the mist. Their faces stared blankly, yet something flickered in their eyes, something human, a plea, a warning. I could not tell. The captain followed my gaze, and for the first time, his expression shifted. A shadow of sorrow passed across his features, gone as quickly as it came. They remain, not alive, not dead, bound to me as I am bound to her. You will understand in time. The fog is patient. She will teach you. My breath caught. No, I whispered. There has to be a way out. For a long moment, he said nothing. Only the fog moved, curling lazily between us, humming with the pulse of the ship. Then, with a voice like stone breaking, he said, "There is no out." The silence that followed was unbearable. My own heartbeat echoed in my ears. The faces in the fog leaned closer, their stares tightening like nooses. The captain turned, the blackness trailing with him, and began to walk back towards his cabin. With each step, the crew's eyes followed, and the ship itself seemed to groan in sympathy, wood straining under some unseen weight. But before he vanished into the shadows of the cabin, He spoke one final time. Stay if you value breath. Wander if you seek truth. Either way, you are hers now. The door shut behind him. The fog thickened once more, and the pale faces faded slowly back into the mist, leaving me alone at the bow. Alone, but not free. For even in the silence, I could hear it still. The sea, whispering, calling, claiming.
The captain's words echoed long after the door to his cabin shut. Stay if you value breath. Wander if you seek truth. I leaned against the rail, my knuckles white, my lungs still raw from the fog's grip. The sea was quiet now, too quiet. No crash of waves, no call of gulls, only the faint hiss of water against the hull, as though the ocean itself was holding its breath. Stay? No. The thought of waiting on that deck, surrounded by silence and unseen eyes, was unbearable. Every instinct told me to move, to escape, to find some way out. But escape seemed impossible. Truth, however, truth might be all that remained. I turned away from the rail and toward the dark stairwell leading below deck. The hatch yawned open, its iron hinges streaked with rust, its edges slick with dew. A cold breath drifted up from the blackness beneath, smelling of brine and old wood, and something else, something sweet, cloying, rotten. My lantern flickered as I lifted it, the flame bending toward the shadows, almost as if drawn. I hesitated only a moment, then set my foot on the first step. The iron groaned under my weight, and I descended. Each step echoed hollow through the passageway. The air thickened, heavy with damp. My light caught glimpses of walls streaked with salt, nails eaten by rust, ropes sagging like veins. And everywhere, the sound. Not loud, not clear, but steady. A low murmur, like dozens of voices whispering at once, muffled by water and wood. The further I went, the more the whispers sharpened. Words tried to form but broke apart before I could grasp them. Still, they pressed close, weaving around me like threads. I quickened my pace. At the bottom of the stairs, the corridor stretched long and narrow, lined with doors. Crew quarters. Their wooden frames swelled from damp, hinges sagging, locks streaked with corrosion. One door hung open, swinging gently, as if waiting. I stepped inside. The lantern's glow swept across narrow bunks stacked too high, the blankets stiff with mildew, boots still neatly set beneath, as though the men had only just risen from them. A journal lay open on one mattress, its pages warped with water. I lifted it carefully. The ink had bled and blurred, but I could still make out fragments. Day 46, fog endless. He hears it in his dreams. The captain says, no land, no stars. Men vanish at night. The page ended with a blot, as if the writer's hand had been wrenched away mid-sentence. I set it down, my skin crawling. A bunk above creaked suddenly, as though someone had shifted in their sleep. I froze, lantern trembling. Slowly I raised the light. The bed was empty, but the blanket, it sagged, heavy, indenting downward, as though something unseen lay beneath it. The air chilled. The whispering voices sharpened. I backed out quickly, pulling the door shut behind me, the latch clicking with finality. My breath came fast, and the corridor seemed longer than before. The fog coiled through the cracks in the floorboards, seeping upward like smoke. I forced myself forward,
past more doors, more whispers. Some rattled in their frames as though fists pounded from within. One shuddered with a sound like claws dragging down wood. I did not stop. At last, the passage widened into a larger chamber. The lantern revealed a mess hall. Long tables bolted to the floor, benches overturned, dishes scattered, cups still half filled with dark water. A single lantern swung overhead, though its flame was long dead. And in the center of the room, a chair sat upright. A man's figure slumped there, motionless. His uniform was tattered, soaked, the brass buttons dulled with verdigris. His head hung low, chin pressed to chest. "Hello?" My voice cracked. The figure stirred, not with life, but with the shift of the ship. His head rolled slowly upward, and the lantern's glow caught his face, or what was left of it. His eyes were gone, empty sockets staring. His lips hung slack, skin waxen, as though drowned long ago. Yet his mouth opened, and from it spilled the same whispers that filled the air, now clearer, sharper. "Turn back. Too late. Belong." I stumbled backward, knocking against a bench. The figure didn't rise, didn't move, only whispered over and over, the words tangled with dozens of others, layering into one endless drone. The walls themselves seemed to hum with it. The fog seeped through the seams of the room, curling toward me, reaching. My lantern sputtered. "No," I gasped, holding it high. "Stay back!" The whispers surged. The flame bent sideways, as if pushed by unseen breath, and nearly died. In the faint glow, I saw movement. Faces, pressing from the fog itself. The crew, men and women, their mouths open, whispering, eyes hollow. They spilled from the mist, not solid, not gone, pressing closer, merging with one another, with the walls, with the air. I fled. My boots slammed against the corridor floor, echoing like cannon fire. The fog pursued, thickening, the whispers rising to a roar. I burst back toward the stairwell, clutching the lantern, lungs burning. At the top, I stumbled onto the deck, gasping for air. The night sky was gone, swallowed by fog. No stars, no moon, only gray, endless and heavy. And there, at the helm, the captain stood waiting. "You wandered," he said, his voice deep, echoing, unreadable. I collapsed against the rail, my hands shaking, the lantern flickering dangerously low. "What is this ship?" I begged. "What have you done to them?" The captain's pale eyes fixed on me, cold as the sea. "I told you, there is no out." And as the fog surged across the deck, swallowing everything in sight, I finally believed him.
The deck tilted beneath my feet as I staggered forward, lungs heaving. The fog rolled over the ship like a living tide, swallowing the rails, the masts, even the lantern in my trembling hand. Only one figure remained clear in the haze. The captain, standing tall at the helm, his eyes pale fire in the dark. "You wandered," he said again, his voice deep and calm, as if he had been expecting me. I clutched the lantern to my chest. Its flame bent and sputtered, but it did not yet die. "What is the ship?" I demanded. "What have you done to them? The crew, the men below?" The captain's head turned slightly, and I realized he was not watching me at all. His gaze was fixed beyond the rail, into the fog that stretched endless in every direction. "This vessel has no crew. Not anymore. Only echoes remain." I felt the cold grip of his words sink into me. Echoes? The voices you heard, the faces in the mist. His tone carried neither pity nor pride, only resignation. They linger because the sea will not release them, because I will not. The fog stirred at his words, swirling around his boots, creeping higher. I thought of the slumped figure in the mess hall, the eyeless sockets, the whispering mouth. My stomach turned. "Why?" I whispered. "Why keep them here?" The captain's lips thinned, a grim line. His hand, gnarled, knotted with veins, rested on the helm's wheel. "Because it is the price. Every voyage demands it. When the storm took us, when the lighthouse failed, the sea claimed us all. But I..." His eyes finally turned to me, and they gleamed with something inhuman. "I struck a bargain." "With who?" The lantern's flame quivered, shadows darting across his face. He did not answer at first. The silence stretched until I feared he never would. Then, softly, he said, "With what lies beneath." My mouth dried. Beneath? The word carried weight, as though it did not mean only water. The captain's voice lowered, becoming almost a growl. "When the storm swallowed us, I begged the depths for mercy, and the depths answered. They gave me the helm, gave me the fog to hide us, gave me eternity upon the waves. But eternity has its cost. The crew, the ship, and now anyone who sets foot aboard." His pale eyes bored into mine. "Even you." The words struck like a hammer. My knees weakened. The whispers surged louder around me, no longer faint, no longer distant. They pressed into my ears, my skull, repeating the same refrain. "Belong, belong, belong." I stumbled back. "No," I gasped. I can't." "You already have," the captain said, his voice cutting through mine like a blade. "The moment you breathed the fog, the moment you heard the whispers, the sea has marked you." The lantern shook in my hand. My thoughts spiraled. "Escape! There had to be escape!" I demanded. "Then how do I leave? How do I get out?" The captain studied me, unreadable. Then, slowly, he turned the helm. The ship groaned in response, timbers creaking, sails sighing though no wind filled them. The fog parted just enough to reveal a shape in the distance, a faint glow, low and steady, pulsing through the mist. A lighthouse. I gripped the rail, heart racing. Hope. "Take me there!" But the captain's face remained stone. "You think I have not tried?" His voice cracked now, tinged with something bitter. "For years uncounted, I have steered toward that light, and always it drifts further, never nearer. It is no beacon, it is the lure." The glow wavered in the distance, almost mocking, before vanishing again into the gray. My chest collapsed inward, hope extinguished like a candle. The captain's hand tightened on the helm. There is no shore, no end, only the sea, the fog, and the debt. The deck shuddered suddenly beneath us. From below came a deep groan, like the hull itself crying out in pain. The fog thickened, pouring upward through the cracks in the boards, swirling faster, hungrier. The whispers grew into moans, then into ragged, hollow cries. The captain's gaze hardened. "It awakens." "What does?" My voice was raw. He looked not at me, but downward, past the deck, past the sea, into the abyss below. His hands twisted on the helm, veins standing out like ropes.
The deep one stirs, and it calls its due. The cries swelled into screams now, echoing from every timber, every nail, every torn sail. The fog lashed across the deck, wrapping my legs, tugging me toward the rails. I clawed at them, my lantern jerking wildly. "Fight it!" I shouted at the captain. "If you bargained, you can break it!" His expression shifted, just slightly, a flicker of something human. Guilt, grief. "I tried," he said simply, "and failed. You will too." The deck lurched violently. My lantern slipped from my grip, clattering to the boards. Its flame guttered, shrank, then went out. Darkness fell. Only the fog remained, glowing faintly from within, swirling like a living tide. And in its depths, I thought I saw eyes, vast, unblinking, watching. The captain's voice whispered through the dark, almost lost in the screams. "The sea always takes what it is owed." And then the deck split open beneath me.
The world fell away. The deck shattered beneath me, timbers groaning like bones breaking under unseen weight. I plunged downward, swallowed whole by the fog. Cold closed in around me, not the chill of night air, but the suffocating embrace of water without form. I flailed, yet there was no surface, no bottom, only endless gray, thick and heavy, clinging to my lungs. And then, silence. The screams of the ship, the moans of the crew, the groan of the timbers, all gone. Only my heartbeat remained, thundering inside my skull, until it wasn't mine alone. Another heartbeat pulsed in the dark, slower, deeper. It throbbed through the fog like the beat of a colossal drum. Each thud shook me to the marrow, each thud bent the world. And then, through the haze, I saw it. Eyes. Two vast orbs, the size of sails, opening in the deep. They glowed with a pale, milky fire, and when they blinked, the fog itself seemed to recoil. The whispers that had haunted me since I stepped aboard rose again, louder than ever. But now I understood. They weren't whispers. They were prayers. Belong. 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 The thing beneath the sea, the thing the captain had bargained with, was awake, and I had fallen straight into its gaze. My chest constricted. My limbs refused me. The fog swirled into shapes, faces I had seen on the ship. Hollow eyes, men, silent mouths forming words I could not hear. They drifted past me like phantoms, their bodies tethered by strands of darkness to the thing below. The crew. They hadn't been slain. They had been claimed. Do you see it now? The voice came from everywhere at once. The captain's voice. Yet when I turned, I saw not the man at the helm, but his shape dissolved, stretched and bound among the fog. His eyes, once pale fire, now glowed with the same emptiness as the crew. "This is the sea's truth," he said, his voice breaking apart like waves on rocks. "This is the debt." I tried to speak, but my throat was stone. Still, a sound broke free. Then why me? His face shifted, sorrow flickering across its broken features. Because you came searching, because you listened, because you stayed,
The fog tightened around my chest. My vision dimmed. The eyes below pulsed brighter, locking me in place. And then, through the endless haze, I heard the truth. Not words, but understanding. There was no escape. No shore. No end. Only the sea, forever hungering. The thing beneath opened wider, and the fog surged toward it like water down a drain. The ship's fragments spiraled, the voices screamed, and I was dragged with them, down into the glow. I felt my body unravel, threads pulled from cloth. My thoughts scattered like leaves on a tide. Yet some part of me remained, watching, hearing, knowing. And then silence again.